This is a presentation of the Sports Source Digital Network, presented by Hearthside Bank.
Welcome into the Sports Source Digital Network. I'm John Pennington, joined by Jimmy Hyams, joined by Ryan Callahan. If you like this kind of content, click the like button. Be sure to hit subscribe. That helps us a great deal. What we're doing today, in case you haven't seen it, USA Today, including the Knoxville News Sentinel's Blake Topmeyer, was one of the three writers who did it. They put out their top 25 coaching rankings for the country. I want to quickly run through those, see where Josh Heupel is. But what I was planning to do, I didn't know that was coming out. I was planning on doing our own kind of ranking without doing ranking. Everybody zigs, I like to zag. What we're going to do after we look at the top 25 is very quickly, I'm going to show you each of the 15 other coaches in the SEC. I'm going to let you play coach in this strange, made-up world where you can actually trade for other coaches. So I'm going to ask you guys as we run through this, who would you trade Josh Heupel for in the SEC? So it's not necessarily, I would rank him 5th and him 6th. I just want to know who you would trade for Josh Heupel. So we'll get to that, but let's start by quickly talking about the USA Today list, and you guys can tell me if you see something that stands out very quickly. Number 1, Kirby Smart, Georgia. Okay. Yep. Number 2, Ryan Day, Ohio State, just won the national title. Ironically, there were people talking about firing him on the day that they whipped Tennessee in the playoffs. But number 2 on the list.
Yep.
Okay. Yes. Dabo Swinney, number 3 of Clemson.
If we're talking about going forward, that's too high for me. I understand he's won national championships. I just wouldn't have him as the 3rd best coach in college football today.
If it's body of work, I understand it. If it's who's doing what today, I'm with you. I don't know that I have him 3.
I wouldn't either because I don't think he's adjusted well to the transfer portal, and I don't know about the NIL, but the portal he's stayed away from, which I think has hurt him a little bit.
Agreed. Number 4, Steve Sarkisian.
That's about right, I think. He's getting Texas there, obviously. They're wanting to break through this year with Arch Manning, but hasn't won it yet. But I think that's about right because he's at the right place, I'll say that, to take advantage of what they have. But I think he's a good coach. I mean, so maybe a little high. You could make the argument for that, but I think he's up there because of everything he kind of has across the board. He brings you the knowledge of a pro-style offense, the offensive guru
Good
label.
with QBs, yeah.
He's knocking on the door.
Yeah.
And now he's got a guy that might be able to get him past through the door.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to come back to this one in a second because there's a comparison here to be made to Josh Heupel. James Franklin, number 5 at Penn State. I think everybody looks at him as the guy who's just not quite good enough. But if I'm an athletic director and I knew that a guy I hired would be running the Penn State program and getting me the success James Franklin is, I would take that in a heartbeat. 10-2 every year, 11-1 means you're in the mix. One year, if Clint Sterner leaves the ball on the ground, you win the national title.
Yeah.
You got to have some breaks at some point, and if you're constantly in the mix, you're more likely to catch a break. I don't have a problem with Franklin at 5, but I'm guessing that would be controversial to 90% of the people watching this.
That's a touch high to me. I'd have him definitely top 8, I think, but I don't know if I'd have him top 5. That being said, I'm not sure off the top of my head who I would have.
Swinney or Franklin, who would you have higher?
Man, that's a tough one. I might still have to go with Dabo just because he's got the longer track record of doing it. And the knock on Franklin for me is in an era where you need offense, he sometimes struggles with offense.
That's true.
I would go with Dabo ahead of Franklin. I do think Franklin's really good.
Yeah.
I also wonder if we had done this after Ohio State lost to Michigan, where would Franklin be compared today?
Right.
But I think Franklin's really good, and again, he knocks on the door a lot too. I don't know if he's going to kick it in, but I do think if you're in the mix enough times, that gives you a chance.
Exactly. It took Bobby Bowden and Tom Osborne longer than you would get today, but they finally got there. Number 6, Dan Lanning of Oregon.
I would have him higher.
Has he done enough, though?
No, probably not.
So you're betting on the
future potential. I mean, this is a guy that to me, if he wanted, he could be Kirby Smart's replacement at Georgia. He could be the Alabama coach in a few years. He could go almost anywhere in the country, and that's kind of how I look at it. He's seen as a guy who's running a program the way you need to in the NIL era. But that being said, he's at a place where NIL is not a concern because Oregon has all the money in the world, it seems. So he's benefiting from that, but he's got the kind of pro-style approach with like Sarkisian, understands player evaluation, seems to. So, and he's doing a good job of recruiting to Oregon. I think people are overlooking that a little bit. He's recruiting to Oregon in a way Chip Kelly wasn't able to. Kelly was getting good skill position players. He's got Oregon going to all parts of the country. winning big-time battles on the offensive line, defensive line. That's not something they've traditionally done. It's a hard sell to get kids to go. We may think of it as a good place to live, but Oregon's not traditionally a place that's easy to convince guys to go live. It's a connection. It's a connecting
nice
flight.
Rainy days there. I mean,
it's a connecting flight from anywhere, basically.
Yeah.
I want to see more from him. I want to see a bigger sample size from Lanning. I think this is a big year for him. If he repeats it after losing Gabriel at quarterback, then I'm going to be on board. But I want to see a little bit more.
All right, number 7, Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame. He's good for one horrible loss every year, but that's it. Other than that, he's done a really good job. He's got the one bad loss a year.
On the upside, I would probably have him ahead of James Franklin on my list, but and because he almost got Notre Dame there already, and that's closer than Franklin has come to this point. So I would give him the nod, but yeah, it's a lot of potential still, kind of like Dan Lanning.
Yeah,
is he going to sustain this?
And I look at it as if I'm an AD doing hiring, I would probably be more conservative. I know what this guy's going to do, which means my job is safe. So I'm going with the consistent guy as opposed to rolling the dice on the up-and-comer. Where would you have?
I wonder where Northern Illinois would put him.
Yeah. Or was it Marshall the year before? So, yeah.
I think he's really good. I think people want to play for him. And he gets his players to play hard, which I think is a big asset that he has. And Notre Dame is still, I don't know, I'd say relatively easy to commit to. I understand the NIL and all that, but look at the tradition that they have. He'd be in my top 10.
Kalen DeBoer, number 8, that's an interesting one because do you look at what he did FCS? Do you look at what he did at Washington? And then it's hard to take out of your mind, but he took over Alabama, which has been killing it, and he lost 4 games. But that's a transition year. I don't know how much. He's a really hard one to rank for me.
He is. Right now, and I know this flies in the face of what I've said with Lanning and Freeman. I don't have enough of a body of work to have him top 10 probably. I think maybe it's just too recent.
You're just making up the rules as you go along.
Maybe it's just maybe just recency stuff. But I look at what he did last year at Alabama, and I think that was a better roster than what they ended up being last year. So I don't know. In the SEC, he's not had a meat grinder of a schedule anywhere he's been like this. So I'm not sure. Can he get Alabama back to that level?
Yeah, he made the playoffs out of a dying Pac-12.
Yeah.
So
I like him based on a lot of what he did at Washington, and he was at Fresno State before that. I give him a little bit of a pass at Alabama. They lost a ton of players, right? They lost an All-American safety to Ohio State.
It was a good number, but it wasn't as many as it was initially feared to be. They did a decent job of retaining some of that because it was thought to be this, everybody's leaving.
That was still going to be so hard, though, to be the transition from a guy like Saban who, he had soldiers down there who were used to, this is the way the Army works. It wasn't somebody who'd been there 3 years.
Yeah.
It's someone who, the formula was in place. Everybody knew what it was, and now here comes a guy to say, no, we're doing it differently. That's tough. So I bet they're not done. There are people who are like, okay, that won't be the same. I bet Alabama comes back, and I bet he's good. I just don't know how good.
Well, so I didn't think Jalen Milroe had as good a year. I thought he was too inconsistent. Yeah. Now, why? Was that coaching? Was it DeBoer? I don't know all the reasons. So this, to me, like I said with Lanning, this is a big year for DeBoer.
Yeah.
Who's his quarterback going to be?
Yeah.
They got issues right there, I think.
Fair enough.
So I like him a lot, but I think this could also be a defining year.
Probably going to be Ty Simpson at quarterback. We'll see how that goes. But I do think the one thing that makes me question it maybe a little more than you guys, because I look at it from the recruiting standpoint, he comes into Alabama. He spent a lot of time recruiting California last year and got killed in-state by Auburn. Auburn dominated the top 10 in-state players. They got almost everybody in the state. At DeBoer, I don't think he let it go without a fight, but how you approach that's interesting to me. So I think there's got to be some adjustment if he's going to make it work.
Right.
Okay, I changed my mind.
All right, Lane Kiffin, number 9.
I get why he's here. I think you're probably going to have a quibble with this. I get why he's in that spot, but I don't think he's won enough to say that he's locked into the top 10. I think he gets a lot of credit for doing what he's doing right now at a place like Ole Miss that's seen as probably a bottom half of the SEC program. So I think they think he's taking a lesser program and making it essentially on par with Tennessee right now, and that's a pretty good accomplishment. But he's got to get in there. He's not made a playoff yet. He's putting quarterbacks out, and he's winning the portal every year. But what else is he doing?
For years, I wasn't that high on Kiffin. I didn't give him a pass at Southern Cal when they had all the scholarship limitations because, in my opinion, if my 60 or better, you're 60, then he ought to be winning those games, and he wasn't. And I know he didn't have 85, but
How often do you need the 85th man?
Yeah,
okay,
so
85th man.
that was kind of so I didn't give him a pass. Florida Atlantic, I thought he did a nice job. I do give him a bump up for doing that at Ole Miss. That is a hard place to win, and he's done a very good job. I think he has matured as a head coach, which I wondered about.
I just wish they'd keep him off Twitter occasionally. The fans love that, but I think that's the one place where his immaturity sometimes pops up.
I'm borderline top 10 with him. I'd almost have to hear some other names before I would say I'm kicking him out.
All right, next one is Brian Kelly at number 10, and then we'll race through the rest of these. Brian Kelly at LSU, is he top 10?
Man.
Is he behind Lane Kiffin?
I think so. I struggle with this one. He's gotten to a national championship game. He's done some good things at times.
He turned around Cincinnati, made them into a power.
But he never can. He's another James Franklin type that can never seem to put it all together.
Kind of like Kiffin.
And
Kiffin, this is the issue. It was the trap. I threw the trap, and you fell into it.
But has he been a head coach anywhere where you can fault him for not having won?
Kiffin was at Southern Cal.
I mean, but at
Tennessee,
at a really tough time though for both programs in a way. And he didn't stay at Tennessee long enough to benefit.
His own fault. Yeah.
Kelly's track record is much better than Kiffin's. No question about that. But I also wonder a little bit. You had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and you didn't really take advantage of that.
Went 9-3 that year. I think.
Yeah. So that concerned me a little bit. I do believe he went to LSU because he said, if Ed Orgeron and Les Miles can win a national championship, I can win a national championship.
Right.
I would probably have him.
There's some truth to that.
Yeah.
When you look at Orgeron and Les Miles,
I would probably have Kelly ahead of Kiffin only because of the track record.
Yeah.
But I think they're very close.
All right, now I'm just going to list some of these. You just give me a yay or nay.
Okay.
Matt Campbell, Iowa State's number 11. Kyle Whittingham, you can just if there's something that stands out, just wave. If not, we'll just move on. Kyle Whittingham, Utah, number 12. Kurt Cignetti, Indiana, 13. He had a great job last year. He'd done well at James Madison.
Yeah, I can't.
But 13 seems high to me.
Yeah, I can't put him 13. That's.
I don't put him ahead of Heupel.
No,
he needs more of a sample size before I put him there.
Now here's a guy with plenty of sample size, but Kirk Ferentz, number 14 of Iowa.
I don't get that one.
Yeah.
See, that's an example of a coach that's doing a really good job at a program that doesn't have high expectations. So, hey, you win 8 or 9 over here, we're fine with that, and you can win 11-5. We don't care.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't have him that high.
Chris Kleeman, Kansas State. Jeff Brom, Louisville, number 16, ahead of Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel is number 17. So Heupel is behind Brom, Kleeman, Ferentz, Cignetti, Kiffin. We talked about, you went with Sarkisian at 4. You liked him up there high because, he's at Texas and he can do good things there. It's like, and Kiffin, he gets credit because he's at Ole Miss. Sarkisian hasn't done it. He was at USC. He was at Texas. He hasn't done it yet, but we're giving him credit that he will because he's at Texas.
Yep.
Kiffin, he's at Ole Miss. He's doing it. Heupel's at Tennessee, which he took over as a dumpster fire, and it's like there's no credit given. It's like, he should be better.
I think Heupel's getting.
He gets he's graded on a different scale is all I'm getting at. And it may turn out to be correct. He may bomb.
Yeah.
But I just think right now it seems a little unfair to me.
Look at the dumpster fire he inherited.
Yep.
Okay, so in the 4 years before he was there, Tennessee won 20 games? I'm not counting the vacated.
Got it right in front of me.
And then
he's 20 and 27.
And then he's won 37, right?
Yep.
In the 4 years since.
Yep.
A 17-game improvement over 4 years. That's an incredible rebuilding job. Not just that, the fact that he lost so many on scholarship. It was almost like 40 when you count the transfer portal and the recruits.
And you're recruiting under the cloud of the NCAA hanging over you back when that meant something.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he gets graded on probably too harsh of a scale because I don't think people see him. Part of it maybe is his personality. He's not seen as this big charismatic guy that's all over social media and stuff. Yep. He's not flashy in interviews, and I think there's this perception that he just runs a gimmicky offense, and that's the only reason they're decent. And there's going to be a ceiling on what he can accomplish. And I don't think we know that yet.
Yeah, you could say that about Mike Leach and Art Briles, too. Yeah. The Art Briles bad example because there was off-field stuff there. But most ADs, though, I think would say, I can get 10 wins a year.
See that?
But let me read you the last lines of the USA Today piece. Kirby Smart, he's built Georgia to last. Ryan Day, he's trailing only Newt Rockne in terms of his winning percentage. Dabo Swinney keeps Clemson as the ACC's most consistent force. Steve Sarkisian. Sarkisian has instituted the ingredients necessary for Texas to hunt national titles.
That's where
Franklin,
I do give Sark credit.
Okay, has instituted the ingredients to win national. But you go on down here, and where's the Josh Heupel quote? Basically, Kiffin, it's like he keeps crushing the portal and he's developing good quarterbacks. That's a good formula. Ferentz, he keeps Iowa punching above their weight. Josh Heupel, final line. He's a coach with a high floor, even if he might be nearing his ceiling. I mean, it's written in a different tone.
That's what I'm saying. I think
he's judged differently by most people. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think most people think he's done about what he's going to be able to do at Tennessee by getting to the playoff, and I don't know why people assume that. I just think he's just now getting the roster to a point where you can start to evaluate what he is.
And I think this year he's going with a youth movement.
Yeah.
And you just lost your quarterback, so it's going to be a rebuilding year. But as we said on our Sunday Sports Source, Ryan Day just won a national title with a very veteran team.
Yep.
The year before, Michigan won it with a very veteran team. If you go with the youth movement this year and you take a step back, but you see that these are guys who can contribute down the road, I'm not looking at that as a big negative. I look at that, to me, my goal if I'm Josh Heupel this year, I know their goal is to win a championship, fine. My goal is to be 1994. If you're 1994 here, Tennessee lost their quarterback in Jerry Colquitt in the 7th play. It took you a while. Todd Helton, is it Stewart, is it Manning? It all started coming together. By the time you beat the hell out of Virginia Tech in that bowl game, you knew these next few years are going to be all right. And I'm thinking if Tennessee can finish that way, I wouldn't be complaining about it. But he is definitely, that was the point of that exercise.
Yeah.
I think he is judged on a different scale than most guys. It may be he's kind of a milquetoast guy.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think people, when they see that, he doesn't carry himself like a Marcus Freeman, like a Ryan Day, like a Dan Lanning. So I think that's part of it. People look at that and they say, they assume that in recruiting that just doesn't translate to great results.
Well, and maybe it doesn't. That's the one area where I would have a question about Heupel. I still question the recruiting.
I think for a while you could have said Heupel was Tennessee's best recruiter, though. So that's the thing. I mean, and that's true of a lot of head coaches.
Personally, you mean?
Yeah, personally.
I'm just saying him and his staff. I'm not blown away yet.
So across the board. But I'm saying his personality, I think, sells better than people would think.
There are a couple of areas in recruiting they got to get better.
Yeah.
They got to get better in recruiting offensive linemen and development.
And receivers.
Those are the two areas that I think they have to do a better job in recruiting.
And you would think, that's the odd thing. They've recruited well. They've found somebody at every other position. Mm-hmm. You would think a guy who has that offensive system would be the easiest areas would be the areas on offense. Now, he kills it with quarterbacks, as you pointed out.
Well,
but offensive line and receivers,
they got to get a hit there. Though.
Yeah, he kills it with getting the star ratings, whether they turn in. Yeah.
Hendon Hooker's his biggest success at quarterback. So that's going to be the story to me is the next few years, does Faison Brandon or George McIntyre, whoever it might be, give you a major success at quarterback? If they don't get that, I think they may be right about his ceiling. If you nail that position and Faison Brandon's the star or whoever, I think they're going to be pretty good.
All right, Jimmy hit on this. I want to run through this very quickly before we get into our little who would you trade question. All right. In terms of Josh Heupel, what he inherited and what he has done with it, as you said, previous 4 years they were 20 and 27. Since he's arrived, they're 37 and 15. So they're 17 games better than they were in the previous 4 years. Kirby Smart at Georgia. He took over a program that was 39 and 13 the 4 years he took over. His first 4 years, he won an SEC title, and he was 44 and 12. So they got 5 games better over 39 and 13 and won an SEC title. Yeah. Now, he won his national title in 5 and 6, but 8 and 5, 13 and 2, 11 and 3, 12 and 2. He didn't take over a program as low, obviously, but that is market improvement over market rigged.
That also includes a year one where he took a step back.
Yeah, went to 8 and 5. Yeah,
so count that record in there, and that's really impressive.
Sarkisian took over a program that was 32 and 18. They're 38 and 17. So 6 games better in the win column, 1 game better in the loss column.
That's where Sarkisian. I think previous coaches at Texas haven't done it for whatever reason. They've had resources. Sarkisian's that's where I give him some credit, even though he hasn't won.
Yeah, I mean, although again, it was 32 and 18, and now it's 38 and 17. But he took over. He's built
first couple years were rough.
Yep.
So he's gotten it there.
Lane Kiffin took over a program that had been 20 and 28. Tennessee was 20 and 27 in Heupel's previous 4 years. Ole Miss was 20 and 28. Heupel's first 4 years, he was 37 and 15 with 1 playoff appearance. Kiffin in his first 4 years was 34 and 15 with no playoff appearances.
Yep.
And yet Kiffin ranks 9th and Heupel 17th.
You get quarterback right, you get a lot of credit for it in this sport.
I guess.
And he's gotten it right for the most part.
Yep. And so the record doesn't matter. It's just he's gotten the quarterback right. Heupel was 3 games better.
Yep. And I'll be curious to see where his quarterback goes this year at Ole Miss too.
Yeah.
And then Brian Kelly, LSU was 36-15 in the 4 years before he got there. They're 29-11 in the 3 years since he's been there. So he would, if he goes 7-4, 7-5ish, he'd basically be breaking even with what he did beforehand.
They'll be ticked if they go 7-5 this year, so he'll probably
be
surpass
under
that.
heat if he goes 7-5 this year. All right, let's do this quickly. And this is just, and let me just say this quickly. Everything's quickly. Hearthside Bank is behind bringing you this show. We appreciate them for bringing you the entire Sports Source Digital Network, for bringing you the Sports Source Saturday Kickoff. Many thanks to Hearthside Bank, folks. If you're looking for a good way to do personal banking, and I don't just mean that as personal in business, I mean personal, hand in hand, someone help you get your financial needs in order, get your financial goals in order and hit them. That's Hearthside Bank. Check them out, hearthsidebank.com. All right. If you are athletic director in our imaginary world where you can pick up the phone, call another AD, and make a trade of SEC coaches. Okay, this is an automatic. Everyone here would trade Josh Heupel for Kirby Smart, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ryan, you'll be the keeper of the trade guys.
Okay.
Jimmy, you'll get the duds.
Well, give me that one.
The funny thing is, 2 years ago, when everybody was looking at what he had done with Kentucky,
Yep.
Yeah.
now he hit his ceiling and then it kind of fell back down. But 2 years ago, I would have given that some consideration.
He might have been
the
on this
job
list,
he had done.
top 25 at least.
Yeah, well, I think he was. He was on this list, yeah. Up until it fell off. But no one's calling them now, right?
Yep.
No, and he's whined about not having enough money in the collective.
No, that ain't going to get you anywhere.
I think some of that money's going to the basketball.
I think
I believe
that's
so.
Yeah.
He's in trouble at Arkansas.
He's in trouble.
He is. Yep.
He's made it pretty far already considering what he's done.
Yes.
Yeah, that he's still there.
Yeah.
All right, so everybody would trade
I'd trade
Sark for hype.
Yeah. I mean, what would he do at Tennessee? Hard to say. That's the one thing about this. He's at, as you said, he's at a program that's Texas is never going to be accused of having not enough resources to win. But he did turn it around from kind of a low point the first couple of years to national title contender now. So I think he's a good coach.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Brian Kelly. Josh Heupel for Brian Kelly.
I don't think I'm trading Josh Heupel. That's going to sound crazy to a lot of people for a guy who's been in a national championship game, but I just don't know.
Made the playoffs twice.
Yeah, I just don't know that he's any better than what you have in Josh Heupel. And I think Josh Heupel, the one thing you can say about him is he is. Maybe it's his system, maybe it's just his way of keeping rosters together. Whatever it's been, I think there is a high floor. Brian Kelly doesn't seem to have that. He seems to have the ability to kind of bottom out every once in a while and go 7-5, 8-4. I think Josh Heupel's got a pretty high floor where Tennessee's going to be pretty consistent, I think, unless I'm wrong about what they've built.
What are you doing, Jimmy?
That's a tough call for me, but I also think that he inherited at LSU a much better situation, obviously, than Heupel did.
Yeah.
And just because his Cajun accent sucks, I'm gonna take Heupel over him.
I started to say if you came to Tennessee, you'd be hearing that southern drawl up here. All right.
We wear smoky gray.
All right, here's an interesting one. Are you trading Lane Kiffin for Josh Heupel? And I play along with the Lane Kiffins over. I do think they're graded on two different scales.
Yeah.
I do think he's overrated. And when he wins a championship, I'll be the first to say, I'll eat the crow and say, man, I'll tell Bob Hodge, shoot a crow, bring it to me, and I'll eat it. But I do still understand that I think these two are comparable.
Yep.
I think they're extremely comparable. I just read the numbers. I think his recruiting's better, but that's all portal.
Yeah.
It's portal.
But I would.
And I don't know that I'd want to build my whole roster that way.
You could make the case that what he's done is more impressive because I don't know that Ole Miss has the resources Tennessee does, and I think the portal thing might be their way of moneyballing it because they're getting better return on their investment by going to the portal every year instead of developing around high school players that you're going to have to wait on a year or two. So each year you get more return on your players by going and getting guys who are ready to step in and start.
Would you call the athletic director at Ole Miss and say, what do you think about a trade?
It's a close call, like you said. I think I might. I think I would.
I would too. I would take Kiffin slightly over Heupel.
And I think the ability to hit the quarterback position is maybe the tiebreaker for me. I think the fact that Kiffin has shown he can get that position right. Heupel, I think he's gotten the right idea.
If he gets something out of the
Yeah.
Joey Aguilar
Yes.
picking him up at the last minute,
Yeah.
that would move on. What I would do, I'll go along with you. I would call the Ole Miss athletic director. I'd swing the trade. I'd get on the phone with Lane. I'd say, psych, You had your chance. Hang on. You blew it. We already had you at Tennessee once.
Now
you blew it.
That's the unspoken part of this. How much as a fan base do you value stability and not embarrassing the program versus what Lane Kiffin has the potential to do, even though I think he's outgrown that for the most part?
I think sidewalk alums do not care.
Yeah.
I think someone who went to UT cares.
Yeah.
I think someone who's 20 or 18 doesn't care. I think someone who's 50 looks at it and goes, yeah, you don't want to be embarrassed constantly. I don't want Lane Kiffin's guys down holding people up on the strip, and you have to say, yeah, but it was only an airsoft gun.
Yeah.
Oh, let's make that distinction. Yeah, that would go a long way. You guys would call him.
Yeah.
I would not. I would keep Heupel and just roll the dice there. I think both of them are a dice roll, and I think Lane Kiffin's more likely maybe to hit a home run, also more likely to embarrass you at some point, in my opinion.
Depends on how many players from New Mexico State he can get to transfer to Vanderbilt.
Hey, if Tennessee could get Diego Pavia this year.
Yeah.
I'll give him credit for getting Vanderbilt a stadium upgrade that they needed for years, facilities upgrades, and they're competitive in NIL in a way that I didn't think they would be. Not that they're killing it, but they're more competitive. So I think they've done some good things there, but no, I'm not trading.
And they beat Alabama, too.
Yeah.
This guy gets some respect in terms of the assistant coaches around the nation.
Yeah.
I hear that this guy is pretty darn good. There are a lot of people that think he is a guy that knows his stuff. Yeah. So
I'll be fascinated by the next 3 years. Does he sustain this at Vanderbilt? Does he eventually get fired? Does someone scoop him up if he does?
Hard for anybody to sustain anything.
Yeah.
And it's the James Franklin thing. If he ever has 3 straight years, it's
Yep.
Jeff Lebby.
No.
I will just say this: it's awfully early
Yeah.
on him, and he's got the same system or.
Yeah,
almost the same system.
It's Heupel light, and it didn't look very good in year one. I mean, I know the talent level is obviously nowhere close.
Yeah, he didn't have a Hendon Hooker sitting around, but
Yeah.
still.
That'll take some work. No.
Not calling.
Florida. This is my case for why you're not trading Heupel for many guys. Most SEC fans are not thrilled with their current head coaching situation. Florida's at the top of that list. They kept Billy Napier when a lot
which
of fans,
I think was smart.
Yeah, and they've invested in NIL and they're improving the roster and everything, but fans still are watching the spring game last month and they're not impressed.
Well, they can't throw the ball.
So I think, I mean, first of all, I'm selling Billy Napier, but I just think that that's an example of kind of what's happening throughout a lot of the conference.
I wouldn't call for that trade either, but I will say I did think it was smart. Not because I think it's going to work out long term, but just because I think there's value in at least having some stability for one more year.
Yep.
I don't think that's the end of the world, because here's the thing. You can sit there and go, well, we should have fired Butch Jones this year or that year. It was 20 years ago. How much does that bother us now? If you give this guy one more year to try and make it work out, as opposed to turning into Tennessee completely, and coaches are looking at it going, wait a second, you fired your last 3 coaches in 3 years each. I don't want that job. You become toxic at some point. And they were teetering on toxic.
Yep.
And at Tennessee, we know toxic.
Yep.
They were teetering on toxic. So I think it was wise just to say, just give him a tourniquet year. Maybe he hits a home run. Otherwise, we're going to take our time and find the right guy next year.
It was a smart decision financially. I wonder if other programs, kind of the way some people wondered if Tennessee drawing a line on Nico is going to start a trend across the country. I don't know that it will. No. I think Billy Napier could be the start of a trend, though, where schools start to reassess. Do we really want to pay $50 million to buy out an entire staff? When we could put that money toward NIL and give them a chance to win next year.
And doing it every 3 years, which is what they were doing. The other thing that I think worked in his favor was, at that point, Golden was still kind of, there was a lot of smoke around their basketball coach. He was winning, but we all know the stuff that was going on behind the scenes.
Yep.
If some bombshell had gone off, they wouldn't have wanted to have to get rid of 2 guys and have to do 2 searches in the same year.
What I found interesting about the Napier situation, whenever Florida said we're keeping him, they played really well down the stretch. They were a very good football team. Yeah. Will that momentum carry over to 2025? I don't know, but they were a really good football team after they stuck with him.
A lot of depend on their quarterback.
Still got a talented quarterback. I was going to say that's one thing working in his favor. No. The way he carries himself to me is ridiculous a little bit, but I think he's a decent coach. I don't know how much he's going to accomplish at South Carolina, but he does some good things in recruiting. You got Lenora Sellers. You know, he's done some things right.
Well, there are people talking about him being a top 3 draft pick next year.
So he's done some good things, but it's way up and down for me. He's pretty erratic, and I just think his behavior sometimes is. I wouldn't like. Even if he was on par with Josh Heupel, which I don't think he is, that would be a turnoff for me. So I don't think so.
I wouldn't make that call either, and I thought it was interesting. Remember when Rattler threw for like 800 yards and 6 touchdowns against Tennessee? And I asked Beamer about him flipping the switch. He said, no, he played that way the whole year. No, he didn't.
No.
He had like 9 touchdowns and 8 interceptions going into the Tennessee game.
He looked great those last 2 games when they had everybody's plays from that Michigan coach
right.
done stole them.
That's right.
No. I think
He and Josh Heupel are really close friends.
Yeah, they are.
These guys are very tight.
I do think he's done some good things at Missouri.
He has. He's done better than I thought.
They've gotten NIL going in a way that I wasn't sure Missouri was capable of, frankly. And so he's done a good job for what that program can accomplish. Does that mean he could go to Georgia and sustain what Kirby Smart's built? I'm not sure about that. So I'm not trading Josh Heupel for him.
Heupel blew him out the first 2 times they met, right? I mean, it wasn't even close. Knoxville and in Missouri would they run for 400 yards in Missouri in that game. So Drinkwitz got in the last game they played, but
they stood on business, from what I understand. They stand on business.
There's no way I would make that call.
No. Okay. Here's an interesting one. He did a good job at Duke. Didn't get off to a good start last year. It wound up being okay. Mike Elko, Texas A&M. Got all the money in the world behind him at A&M.
Yeah, I can't make the trade. I do think he's a good football coach. I think that's one that we might reassess in 3 years potentially. But A&M's a tough place. I don't know what it is about that program. They never can seem to reach their potential. I don't know why. Maybe they just haven't had the right coach. Maybe he changes that. But I'll be interested in seeing what he does. He's either going to be a playoff contender or at least keep this program at that level, I think, because he's a good football coach. I just don't know if he can win a championship there.
I wouldn't make the call either, and one of the things that intrigues me about the trend in college football is he's a defensive-minded coach, right?
Yep.
You got to score some points nowadays. And I'm not sure that I think A&M's offense, at least with – maybe it's the quarterback who got hurt last year or the coordinator, whatever it is. I'm not sure I think Elko can generate enough offense as a head coach to where I would want to make that phone call.
And that's something else. Getting back to Heupel for a second, that's one thing where I would give him credit over some of these coaches. Maybe even Lane Kiffin. A lot of guys, and we can sit there and say, well, his offense stunk. Of course he went to defense. A lot of offensive guys can't do that. We talked about it on the show 2 years ago. It was the Texas A&M game. I think they went for it 4th down, their own side of the field, and we're like, look, if you're going to win with defense, you can't put your defense in a bad position. You have to stop thinking like an offensive coach.
Yep.
Kiffin's a guy who went to Alabama and was going for it on 4th down inside his own 20 because the analytics told him to. Whereas the last couple of years, Heupel has said, I'm playing conservative, I'm playing to my defense, that's the strength of the team. That may be boring, it may make some fans mad. I think it's a check mark. The guy most offensive coaches win with offense. The Mark Stoops defensive coaches in the world, push comes to shove, they're going to say, I know it's 4th and 2 at their 30. Punt it anyway, we'll win with defense. For Heupel to change like that, again, he may bomb out and finish terribly here at UT, but that's a positive in my opinion.
I think the Oklahoma game is where that really reared its head.
Yeah.
He went conservative. He played the best way for Tennessee to win the game, stayed out of harm's way. I thought that was a mature coaching by him.
Yeah, and I don't know how many times you ever saw there aren't a lot of those offensive guys who could do that. It's one of the things, Nick Saban, and I'm not trying to put Heupel on par with Nick Saban or Steve Spurrier, but Nick Saban was a defensive guy, hated the up-tempo offense. Then he realized, can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
Did it. Steve Spurrier, they put better players on defense his second go-around in the SEC. He can't get guys 5 yards open, so a quarterback can just throw balloons to them wide open. So what's he do? Well, let's go to a zone read and go to an SEC championship game 2 years in a row with a zone read. The good coaches are willing to say, I've won like this. I believe in this. Chuck it. I got to go with this.
They adjust.
Yeah, and I think Heupel's done that the last couple of years. So
that shows evolution as a coach that I think a lot of people weren't sure he had coming into Tennessee.
Yeah.
And you've got to have a certain pragmatism as a head coach. He's shown he has that.
Yeah, and some guys just can't get past it. All right, here's an interesting one that this is a guy that a lot of people wanted hired here from Liberty.
I think,
and he's set up this year to take a step forward.
I think he's shown you at Auburn why I wouldn't make this trade. First of all, way more risk.
He showed me at Ole Miss why I wouldn't make this trade.
way more risk off the field. But in addition to all that, I think his offense is kind of similar to Heupel's. So I don't know that he's an upgrade offensively, and that would be one consideration. And at Auburn, a school that has very similar resources and history as Tennessee, he's not done it so far. So I would not make that trade, and I'm not sure he's going to work out at Auburn.
I wouldn't either, and I don't think that his offense at Auburn has been nearly as good as I think it could have, should have been. He had a really good running back.
He's gotten quarterback wrong. That's the problem.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't go there, and I don't think he's done a very good job at Auburn.
All right, I've been letting him lead off and you bat cleanup. We're going to turn it around these last couple here. So you bat lead off and you bat cleanup.
Okay.
This is an interesting one. Now, I think, I'll go ahead and jump in. I think I would make the trade for DeBoer. Now, it's betting on the upside, but he's shown it for short bursts at a couple of places. And I include, if you do well at the FCS, I think there's something to be said for that. I think if you're a smart coach, it translates. And I'm not completely done with him after what happened at Alabama last year. That's very close to me. This was iffy, but I would take DeBoer. I would make that trade for DeBoer right now.
I think it's iffy as well, and I like what he did at the FCS level at Washington, and I think it was Fresno State. Was the other school.
It was 2 years before Washington.
He was 102-14 or 104-12 or whatever. And although I kind of give him a pass with Alabama, I still question how he'll succeed in the SEC. So I know that Heupel had a great year in the SEC in 2012. I would not make the call.
Interesting. I thought I was going to. So you guys aren't going to make the call.
This is a coin flip for me. I think
okay.
I think I'm going no though.
I flipped it and went yes. That's interesting.
See again, I think
you guys are in on Kiffin, out on DeBoer.
Yeah.
I would be in on DeBoer, out on Kiffin.
This one I may be wrong about in 2 years maybe.
No, that's right. He's out because you guys outvoted me.
So he maybe we'll reassess that one in a couple years and I'm wrong, but I wondered the success outside the SEC, not the same as winning in the league, and I just look at that roster. Even with what he lost, he had a roster better than Tennessee's, and he went 9-3. Lost to Vanderbilt. I just, at the end of the day, I don't think that would have happened if Josh Heupel was the head coach of that team.
I think if we do this at the end of this season, your answers will be different.
Maybe.
I think he's going to be okay this year, and I think Heupel's going to take a step back, but we'll see. Last one.
No.
Why would you even ask? No.
All right.
No.
So there are only 3 coaches you guys would trade for, and there are only 3 I would trade for.
Yep.
Kirby Smart, obviously.
Hold on, you're trading for Lane Kiffin?
No.
Oh, okay.
Mine's down there.
Okay.
And that's close.
Yep.
Kirby Smart and Steve Sarkisian are the 2 obvious upgrades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we sure there are no other obvious? Well, maybe I'm wrong.
A lot of people would argue Brian Kelly, but we disagree.
I don't think that's an obvious upgrade.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a call I'd make, but I don't think it's obvious.
No, not a big one for sure, even if it is an upgrade.
And I think DeBoer's a really close call, and I think Brian Kelly's a close call.
Yeah.
How well Josh Heupel adapts the next 2 or 3 years, I think, will determine whether we were right about not trading him for some of these guys, because he's got. You can't just stay complacent with staff and things like. You've got to show a willingness to be cutthroat in this league and always innovative. And I think he's shown signs of that. Again, the adjustment offensively last year, but can he fix the offense now? Can he fix the offense and make it a top 10 offense again? Get it back. I think there's some things they've got to change offensively. We'll see if they make those changes, and that's what's going to determine if he's that top.
I'm glad they brought in Seth Luttrell to trying to bring in a set of outside eyes. I just don't know how much Heupel's going to listen to that. I'm not big on we're just going to promote from within everybody that leaves on offense. You haven't done that on defense, and you've been really good on defense. I just wish they would bring in some fresh blood on offense, and the thing I would do when it's not just bringing in a fresh idea, it's go find the best receivers coach or running back coach or offensive line coach, wherever, at an SEC school, pay them through the nose and bring them in here. Hurt a competitor and steal a proven recruiter. It's rare to go back in SEC history and see, well, they went and got a great recruiter, but it all blew up in their face. Usually if you go steal the great assistant recruiter, you're still a pretty good recruiter at the new spot. So recruiters can recruit. And I just think that's the one thing they're missing, because I don't look at their recruiting. You cover it, and we've debated it. I don't look at their recruiting and feel like that's the strength of this team by any means. I think you're still trying to win with his system. And if it's not up-tempo, I don't know that you're winning with it.
We talk about culture a lot. I think we see that on the player side. I think where it shows up maybe the most, though, is on the coach's side. I think he wants a culture that's enjoyable to work in. He wants to work with guys that he trusts. When you bring in guys like that, it can blow up on you. So I will say that he's kept a higher floor probably by keeping it that way and keeping a positive culture. But not bringing in those egos from the outside sometimes can hold you back.
He's much more Fulmerian than he is Majorsian. Majors was a churn them out, very much like Nick Saban. You get them in here, frustrate them, they leave after 2 years, fine, you go get some other great coach. And you look at the number of guys who wound up in the NFL off Major staff, it's a mile long. Yeah. Fulmer He kept it close, and everybody loved one another. They won a championship doing it. You can win it two different ways. But I think I like the grind them down and burn them out, but make sure you've got the best assistants in the country.
One thing I was going to say about this, you said that you believe that after this year, DeBoer would.
I think he'll I think he'll have a better year than 9-4, and I think Heupel will take a step back this year.
Yeah. Okay. So my point is, you got a lot of coaches that we were discussing that have a new quarterback.
Yeah.
Tennessee does. Ole Miss does. Alabama does. There's several of them that could juxtapose our positioning based on what they do. So the quarterbacks at several of these schools could change our list for next year.
Yeah, and because this is an interesting question, we'll finish with this one. We might have been going for 2 hours now, I don't know. But with the NIL, well, not the NIL, the portal. Portal's what's changed everything. You look, and it's like 7 of the top 8 quarterbacks who signed in 2023 have already changed schools. Will West pointed out on radio when I was with him this week, saying that I think like 11 of the 13 quarterbacks drafted in the NFL this year had played at 2 different schools. So can you look? I mean, one of the things I would be looking for as an athletic director is consistency. With the transfer portal, can anyone expect consistency anymore? If you're not, I mean, obviously Georgia and Ohio State, and it used to be Alabama and Clemson. So there's like 2 schools a year who do it.
Right.
I don't know that you can really look at it. And my point is, how often are we're saying that there's a lot of quarterbacks this year that could change our rankings? That's going to be the case every year as long as we get this portal thing going, because you're constantly bringing in somebody new and not knowing what you're getting. You don't know if it's going to mesh.
I think you have to be more patient with the down year, because it's going to happen whenever you lose a number to the portal or you get the quarterback spot wrong. So you're going to have a lot of, and there may be a couple of exceptions, but I think you'll see a lot of teams that like good, and then whoop, they take a dip. But then they come back. So I think you have to be a little bit more patient as an AD and as a fan base, which is hard to do. But I think you're going to see more dips with some of these programs because of the portal.
That's one reason I covet the quarterback position and getting that right, and why I lean to Kiffin. If you can show the ability to go in the portal and pick the right guy from a lower level or whatever and make it work, that's a big deal in this sport.
I guess I just look at last year. They went all in on their roster. They spent tons of money, and he's still sitting at home not watching the playoffs.
Yeah.
Lost 3 games.
They lost a game they shouldn't have. They lost at Florida.
And Kentucky.
And
that Kentucky was abysmal. That was at home against a bad Kentucky team.
So, it's interesting. There's a lot of these guys who are close, but I think we got it right. Sarkisian and Smart are
for sure,
far and away, and then Kiffin, Kelly, DeBoer are all kind of question marks. And then there's really nobody else that I'd even put as a question mark.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
I agree with that.
Ryan Callahan, Jimmy Hyams, thanks to both of you. Appreciate you. Thanks to you for watching. Be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, hit the notify button. If you find another button, just don't hit that button. All the other buttons, I'm good with you hitting. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time on the Sports Source Digital Network.